All right, hello everybody. My name is Johanna Varner, or you can also know me as Pika Joe, and I am a pika biologist at Colorado Mesa University in Grand Junction. I've been a science advisor for the Colorado Pika Project for many years now, and I'm excited to share with you for this partner training a little bit about pikas and Pika ecology. I'm then going to tell you a little bit more about how to identify pikas in the field, and then I'll share with you a little bit more about how the data that you and your partner organization and all of your volunteers collect will be used by the Colorado Pika Project. So, without further ado, American pikas are small mammals. They're closely related to rabbits and hares, and they inhabit mountain ranges in Western North America. Now, we found pikas in a specific habitat type that we call talus, which refers to rock slides and boulder fields. And for the rocks to be an appropriate habitat for pikas, they need to be about 1 to 3 feet in diameter. So basically think basketball to mini fridge size. And that basically gives pikas the protection that they need from predators. So there's enough space that they can get in and escape from the heat and the elements, but the rocks are also close enough together that they are protected from predators. So if you think about again, a pika is about the size and shape of a russet potato is a good way of thinking about it. If you think about a rock slide think about if you're holding a potato, if you were able to sort of noodle that potato around in the rocks and it would be kind of close in, then that is probably going to be a suitable habitat for pikas. They're diurnal, but they are definitely most active in the morning and the evening, and they don't really like to be out in the rain or when the temperature is above about 75 degrees Fahrenheit. So you'll typically find them perched high on a rock with a good vantage point during the day. So you can see from this map that Colorado has a really great core pika habitat, and you'll find them basically in most of Colorado's mountain ranges in the western half of the state. Now, pikas are unique among lagomorphs, so these are animals that are related to rabbits and hares in that they are the only ones that actually call. So here is their characteristic short call. But they also make a long call vocalization, which is typically only made by males, although sometimes late in the season, both males and females will make a long call. And I want to point out, as I played this video, one of the things that is a defining feature of a long call, if you can't actually see the animal calling, is that they are these short sort of trill notes. And then you'll hear that the call actually slows down. And then towards the end, the pike will make these sort of descending, like, meh, like it just kind of got tired and gave up. And so those are features that can help you determine a long call and distinguish it from other animals. So cute. Okay, so unlike many alpine animals, pikas are also unique in that they actually don't hibernate. And there's not a lot of food available when most of their habitat is under snow. And so in the summer, what you'll find is that pikas will spend a huge amount of time amassing these big winter food caches. They'll eat a variety of plants, including grasses, wildflowers, mosses, shrubs, or pine needles, but they will cache some of these plants as well in a huge amount of food on the talus like this. So if you haven't seen the pika yet in this picture, he's sitting right there. Couple of interesting hay pile facts. A single pika's hay pile can weigh up to about 60 pounds, which may not seem like that much food, but actually, if you think about pikas are about the size of a potato, if you were to actually scale this into human terms, 60 pounds of food for a pika is equivalent to somewhere around 20,000 pounds of food, not including packaging for a human, which is essentially the equivalent of us making over 5,000 trips to the grocery store in 3 months. And on each of those trips, carrying home 4 pounds of food, which is about 2 to 3 heads of lettuce in your mouth. So the next time that you're at the grocery store, I encourage you to spend a little bit of time in the produce section, look at the potatoes, look at the heads of lettuce, and I think that'll give you a good sense of what kind of work it is to make a hay pile for a pika. Interestingly, many of the plants in a pika's hay pile are actually extremely toxic, but the toxins act as a natural preservative, helping to keep the food fresh through summer. Pikas are also very territorial, and as you can see in this series of images, they will defend their territory in fairly vicious but still quite adorable ways. And this makes sense, right? If you think about the amount of work that they've done to make this big hay pile, it would be really a bummer if somebody else came and stole all their food. So they do sometimes get into pushing and biting matches. Other interesting pika facts that you might be interested in, juveniles, this is a picture of a baby pika. They are smaller and they have a higher pitched call, so they sound a little bit like, and they have sort of a even, very light grayish buffy coat. So you'll notice that in adult pikas, they oftentimes have this molt line here where you can see that they are changing from their winter to their summer coats and vice versa. But juveniles, because it's their first coat of hair, don't have a molt line, and that's a key characteristic. And they are usually born around the time of snowmelt when there's food, so that as the snow melts, there's food available for mom while she's nursing. And then they emerge from the den several weeks later. They're about the size of a little red Yukon potato. Juvenile survival is low. Sometimes pikas will have a second litter in the fall, and those guys, it's particularly difficult because it's really hard to acquire a territory, defend your territory, and build a hay pile before the snows come. So those guys oftentimes in the second litter only survive if they inherit a hay pile in a territory. Their primary predator are weasels. Occasionally raptors and other predators will be able to get pikas, but the weasels are the only predator that can actually follow them into the rocks. Now, pikas have gotten a lot of kind of acclaim nationally for being kind of a harbinger of climate change or an indicator species. And it does seem like they may be sensitive to climate change in parts of their range. We have seen population declines linked to climate change in some areas of the pika's range. Particularly, we see these at relatively lower elevation mountain ranges, and these mountain ranges that are super isolated in places like the Great Basin and in southern Utah. However, there are other populations that seem to be a little bit more resilient, and in the range core in Colorado in particular, animals are still relatively numerous. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that these kinds of changes aren't happening here. It just may mean that we're in the early stages of it. So we know that average annual temperatures have increased by about 2 degrees Fahrenheit over the past 30 years in Colorado, and all climate models predict future increases of somewhere between 2.5 to 6.5 degrees in average annual temperatures. We also are seeing changes in our winter snowpack and an increase in precipitation that's falling as rain. So this increased warm summer temperatures could lead to summer heat stress for our pikas here, and a reduced winter snowpack may lead to actually the animals experiencing overall colder temperatures in the winter, because that snowpack acts as a layer of insulation against cold extremes, and a change in the water resources that are available. So we're seeing a lot of geographic variability in the response of pikas to climate change, and I think that highlights how this is really an outstanding question and a research opportunity. In addition, we're seeing some populations of pikas that persist in these unusual environments and seem to be relatively stable. And so there's a lot of conversation about how this could be potentially interpreted as resilience, but it could also be interpreted as the pockety nature of these sort of refugial conditions in an otherwise hostile landscape. And so I think that these kinds of questions highlight this big question about like how pikas are going to cope with climate change, and trying to identify the importance of research to identify these different kinds of climate refugia for pikas. So these areas where the local site characteristics may help to mediate the impact of climate change, as well as the animal's ability to be behaviorally flexible. And that may include things like being active at night, as in this picture here, or changing their diet to relatively unusual plant resources in a way that helps them to not be as exposed to stress and temperatures. So I think that this highlights the importance of the research that is being done with the app. So I want to talk for just a quick minute about kind of how the data from the app are going to be used when you go on these trips. This is a map that shows you the distribution of verified Pika observations that were collected by volunteer community scientists across a variety of different existing projects. And these data actually were used in a big range-wide analysis of Pika climate associations that was published a few years ago in Nature Climate Change. And I think is a great example of how trend data generated by volunteers, like the data that you and your volunteers might submit through the app, can really help support science-based management decisions for sensitive species like pikas. But you might also notice that the distribution of points on this map also represents the abundance of volunteers in major sort of cities like Portland and Denver, wealthy mountain towns like Jackson and Bozeman, or visitors to sort of famous national parks. And this distribution is actually inversely correlated with the areas that we've seen the greatest declines in pika populations or the scientific need. So this is one of the places where we're really hoping that observations from this app can help to advance our understanding of what's happening in some of these more remote areas. And you'll see in particular kind of here in Western Colorado, there's definitely an area of scientific need. And so hopefully you and your organization may be able to help us kind of fill some of this research gap. So just by way, when the app was launched and its first summer of real use, it was in 2023, we had over 2,000 downloads and 350 observations. You can see that a lot of those came from volunteers with the Colorado Pika Project, but that we still could definitely use some additional observations in some of these isolated mountain ranges here in Southwest Colorado. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the background of this project, the science of pikas, and how the data from this app are going to be used.